How lurid. Oh, hey. I forgot you guys were going to be here. Gosh, silly me. Just getting all wrapped up in this fantastic new book. Jeez Louise. This guy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wearing my reading mask. Please forgive me. Ooh, that's better. Hey guys, I am Wesley Southard, and I have been requested to read you a passage from the new book that Mr. Mark Steensland and I wrote called Where the Devil Waits. Look at that nifty cover. It is out right now from Cemetery Gates Media, and normally I would read, I don't know, something from the beginning, the first chapter or something, but it's not that exciting. It's just a lot of build-up. How about I read you something a little bit more fun? I'm going to start on a chapter about 3/4 of the way through. Chapter 28. There we go. You think that someone who worked at a movie theater for the last 3 years, constantly surrounded by the magic and ambiance of Hollywood, with the ability to see any new movie they wanted to for free the night before its release, would love the smell of popcorn. For Chris, nothing could be further from the truth. Maybe that had been true for the first few months of working at Pyramid Cinemas, especially when he started at the concession stand, slinging overpriced food to impatient guests. But the longer he worked there, the more he came home reeking of hot butter and nacho cheese, the more he detested the stench. But he still enjoyed the few perks of the job, like sharing the same air with Kaylee Massey. Chris leaned on the top of the counter and gave her his best smile. Come on, Kaylee, seriously. How many times are you going to make me ask? The young blonde rolled her eyes as she continued to wipe down the candy counter with a damp rag. As many times as it takes before you realize I'm not going to give you the answer you want. Now move. Chris stood up and let Kaylee wipe underneath him. God, why do you have to be like this? She shook her head and sighed. Because you're annoying as hell. 3 years and you haven't learned that I don't want to go out with you. It's quite sad, really. That's harsh. I'm not that bad, am I? I mean, I'm funny and I have boyish good looks. Kaylee barked out a laugh. You're right. Saying you're good looking is funny. Chris pursed his lips. Wow, thanks, Dick. Snapping off the candy case lights, she reached behind the popcorn machine and turned off another switch, flipping off the marquee lights and lobby lights outside. Sorry, Chrissy. I'm not looking for boyish. I'm looking for a man with a real job and a car and some hair on his face. I have hair on my face, he muttered. No, you have some lint on your chin. That doesn't count. Tossing the rag into the sink, she stepped around the counter. Look, Chris, you're a nice guy. I'd like to continue being friends. I'm sorry, but I'm just not attracted to you like that, okay? Chris sighed and crossed his arms. Fucking friend-zoned again. That figures. Kaylee gave him a swift punch to the bicep. Quit being a damn baby. That's another thing girls don't like. You're 21 now. Show some confidence. Some balls. Stand up straight. Brush your hair occasionally. Wear a nice belt. And wax that damn unibrow. You can be a virgin without having to look like one every day. I'm not a virgin. Placing her hands on her hips, she snapped. If you're not a virgin, then I'm Charlize Theron. Chris huffed. You're mean. You know that? I'm going to stop asking you out now. I deserve better. Kaylee's hands went skyward. Hey, mission accomplished, everyone. Time to go home. 2 cinema goers walked around the concession stand and out the front door. Chris yelled, have a good night, y'all. Come back real soon. He winked at Kaylee. One day, you're going to regret letting a good guy like me go. You'll see. Nodding sarcastically, Kaylee said, yep, one day when I wake up in my California King with my husband Jason Momoa in our Hollywood mansion, I'm going to think, you know what? I should have married Chris Martocchio, that guy with the nose hair that vibrates when he talks. He laughed. Asshole. His walkie-talkie suddenly cracked with the voice of his manager, Vic. Auditorium 12 is ready for cleaning, Chris. Get a move on. Chris picked up his walkie-talkie. Roger, roger. He snapped up the broom and dustpan and pushed the wheeled garbage can down the hall. He pointed at Kaylee. I'll be right back. Hopefully you'll have a better attitude when I return. Kaylee grinned and flipped him the bird. Don't count on it, babyface. A few straggling customers walked up the hall in the opposite direction. Chris nodded as he passed, then shouldered open the swinging auditorium door to Auditorium 12. Because the theater was old and the air conditioning had never been upgraded, the entire space was warm and smelled of stale sweat and even staler food. His shoes made a snapping noise as he walked across the sticky, trash-littered linoleum floor in the hallway. Chris let out a long sigh and began sweeping up popcorn boxes and loose candy pieces. He hated to admit it, but Kaylee was right. He was a loser. He obviously wasn't going to work here forever, but if he was ever going to hook up with a girl and not his hand, he needed some major upgrades in his life. He reached up and touched the small patch of hair between his eyes, connecting his eyebrows. He groaned. Then he thought of Frank, and groaned again. Don't think of that right now, he thought. Keep working, worry about that later. Worry about Frank being dead later. Chris stopped sweeping and wiped his teary eyes. Motherfucker. A shuffling noise from the front of the auditorium startled him. Chris quickly stood up straight. Hello? No answer. He took a few steps into the main room and looked over the railing. Somebody quickly ducked down. Setting his broom against the wall, Chris stalked down the aisle. Damn kids. When he entered the main room, he glanced up the steps to the stadium seating. The film's credits had finished rolling and the house lights had been turned on, revealing rows of empty chairs. But they were all high-backed, with plenty of places to hide. Anyone there? He waited a few moments. Whoever's in here, we're done for the night. Like Semisonic said, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you need to skedaddle from here. When no one revealed themselves, Chris sighed and trudged his way back up the stairs. Using the small flashlight he kept in his back pocket, he stopped at every row and bent over to gaze down the narrow walkways. The higher up he went, the more frustrated he became. He knew he had seen someone, and he was determined to find them. Maybe tossing some dickhead 14-year-old out on their ass would afford him a smile tonight. By the time he reached the top of the incline, he stared down the walkway and found what he saw in every other row. Absolutely nothing. Sighing, he shook his head and stood up and walked back down the stairs. He immediately froze. A woman was sitting in the middle of the auditorium, her head pointing at the floor. Sighing, Chris headed toward her. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the movie is over. You'll have to leave the theater so I can clean it. When he reached a row, he paused. Because she was leaning forward, her long brown hair obscured her face. She didn't move, almost like she was asleep. He stared at her for several seconds, trying to see if she was even breathing. Though he couldn't quite make out her features, she appeared to be middle-aged or so, maybe in her 40s or something, but who knew? Everyone looked old as hell to his 21-year-old eyes. Chris slowly approached her. She didn't look up, didn't move at all. Ma'am, did you hear me? He waited for a response. Are you okay? Chris was startled when her hand twitched sharply and lifted her arm. Like the legs of a spider, her stiff fingers crept down her thigh. When she could go no further, she slowly pulled up her black skirt, revealing her knees at first, then her pasty white thighs. Stunned into silence, Chris could only stare, his eyes widening as her black silk panties came into view. He licked his lips and managed to swallow. Excuse me, ma'am? Without speaking, she lifted her head, her hair still obscuring her face. With her free hand, she reached out and grabbed Chris's belt. He began to back away, but some primal area of his lizard brain told him to stay put. He wasn't expecting it, but he did find himself quickly hardening. The faceless woman put a finger to her lips and seductively shook her head. Chris didn't know what to do. He caught plenty of frisky teens in the middle of awkward, dry hand jobs in the back row, completely unaware of the security cameras hidden in the top corners of the room, and had thrown them out. He had no idea what Vic would do if he walked in right now and saw this. But his little head was overriding his thoughts, and the little head, well, that always seemed to win. The faceless woman pulled him closer. She unbuckled his belt. Wouldn't you, Chris stuttered, rather come over to my place after I'm done working? There's a lot more privacy there. She responded by jerking him closer. In a flash, she yanked off his belt, tossing it across the room. Whew, guess not. He quickly looked around. They were still alone. Okay, then. She opened his cargo shorts, then dropped them to his feet. A moment later, his boxers joined them. As soon as her mouth found him, Chris closed his eyes and tilted his head back. He never imagined his first time getting a blowjob would be by a stranger at work, but he guessed there was a first time for everything. Although, to be honest, he did wish it were Kaylee instead of someone's stubborn mother. Also, he kind of thought it would feel warmer, less chilly. Regardless, it still felt better than he could have imagined, and that was a big win in his book. Breathing hard, he reached down to touch her head. With both hands, he brushed her long brown hair from her face and revealed a pair of dead, milky white eyes staring back at him. Before he could react, he felt her teeth snap together. Vic exited his small office behind the snack bar and clicked the lights off in the back room. Grabbing his hat and his other half of his meatball sub from the cabinet, he walked to the front lobby. "Good night, Kaylee. See you tomorrow." She waved back, holding a full garbage bag over her shoulder. Goodbye, Mr. Lehman. "Don't forget to lock up, please. Chris forgot the other day, and I don't need to lie awake again wondering if it was done or not." She nodded. "No prob." Vic nearly came out of his skin when he heard the scream. "What the hell was that?" he shrieked. Kaylee dropped the garbage bag. I have no idea. Come on!" Together they ran to the back hallway. When they reached Auditorium 12, Chris stumbled through the swinging door, his hands over his crotch. Kaylee screamed, and Vic gasped when he saw the blood. It sprayed between his fingers, hitting the floor in long red arcs. His face ghostly white, Chris dropped to his knees and rolled over on his back. His breath was shallow, his eyes wide and staring blankly at the ceiling. Vic yelled, "Call an ambulance! Quick!" He stood and ran into the theater. He saw the wheeled garbage can lying on its side, its contents spilling across the floor. Beneath it, a long streak of blood on the dark linoleum. Terrified, he followed the crimson trail as it led into the open room, down the aisle, up the stairs, across the row, and right to... Vic gagged and turned to puke up his meatball sandwich. And that is where I'm going to leave you guys. Thank you for listening. Again, Where the Devil Waits by Mr. Wesley Southard and Mr. Mark Steensland, out right now from Cemetery Gates Media. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go back to reading and see how this thing ends. Oh, 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 so scary.